I will follow the tradition of Hilal Bhai to read my paper. But before that, I'll thank organizers to give me for this opportunity to understand what is political theory, what is creative theory, and what could be creative theory in possible conditions of sheer homogenizations and sheer standardization of knowledge system and the production. Professor Bhikhu Parikh was Vice Chancellor of one university in Baroda, MSU, and where my university is located, Central University of Gujarat. So he was a Vice Chancellor for 5 years, actually 3 years. The term in the State University is for 3 years, and he was Vice Chancellor. Second term he did not take, and he wrote, in first term he wrote a book called Marxism and Ideology, Marx and Ideology. Second volume he did not write. And I think in 1989 he wrote this Poverty of Political Theory in India. So I think the possible connection as a Vice Chancellor and academician was mismatched during his time when he was a Vice Chancellor, and there was hardly interaction with the political theorists in India, particularly Western part, because in MSU and Baroda there were lots of people who were doing political theory, and certainly they can't be dubbed as in a category of poverty or political theory. And I think in 2015, there used to be debate between us, particularly me and Hilal Bhai, or Mahindraji was siding with the Hilal Bhai, that we should not define creative theory, because both perceived that doing is liberating and defining is constraining. But I said that we should define what is creative theory, because that would give us perspectival vantage point where we are coming from in this time. So I'll read my paper, which is not lengthy, but would throw some of the points maybe at the cost of repetition. Doing creative theory involves minimalistic principles and maximalist principle. By way of minimalist principle, it ensures that contradiction is writ large in the contemporary world, which does not take an isolationist and relativist approach. Thus, dialogue amongst anti-binary heterogeneity, I suggest that we have to have dialogue amongst anti-binary heterogeneity, ensures the arrival of melange. The beginning of dialogues ensures that meaningful differences, which act as a critical catalyst against the subsumptions of orthodoxy. So I think we need to do meaningful differences. I don't think that we are doing creative theory as a site of one agreement plethora per se, but meaningful differences, because that is what is needed in this time where there is a subsumptions of orthodoxy in every possible sphere of life. So minimalist is this. Since 2014, we are doing minimalist principle. Every year on 5th and 6th September, you will have creative theory colloquium at India International Center. And this year we will have on 4th and 5th and 6th. What I am trying to understand, maximalist principle of why should we do critical theory? Why creative theory is to be done? The entire exercise attempt to explain the creative theory's maximalist approach, and I think that at this juncture, we need transversal imagination. And we do not have transversal imagination. That would not be very apt at this juncture. Creative theory pursues the recognition of, and this would be my definition of creative theory if I can define. I don't understand the category of confidence and non-confidence, but I'll try to define. Creative theory pursues the recognition of temporality while emphasizing heterodox readings to reject it as a fait accompli. Temporality is important, it can't be considered as a fait accompli. Through epistemic openness and transformative action. Recognizing the significance of anti-binary knowledge and non-acceptance of reducing structural question to oblivion. So these are some of the components of creative theory. I think creative theory is a collective project. Here, theory is not merely autobiographical. Theory is not autobiography. I don't think so that theory as an autobiography should be considered very important. And this is a contra to Nietzsche's famous position. This is a Nietzsche's position that theory is a autobiography. And according to Nietzsche, I have gradually come to realize what every great philosopher so far has been, a confession of faith on the part of its author, and a type of involuntary and unself-conscious memoir. So theory is unconscious memoir for Nietzsche. I don't think we are doing certainly that. But we are also not doing creative theory, which may go against Quentin Skinner types of theory, where reading history is excessive obsession. Reading author needs excessive obsession with the historicity and the linguistic perfectionism. So we are also not doing that. And Quentin Skinner is important, that you cannot recover the intention of author if you don't have historicity or you don't have language acumena. I think I'll go with this formulation by one scholar, and this is also debated in creative theory, that while doing theory, we need two things, intended meaning and extended meaning. And these are two important for us, that intended meaning is very, very important of any author or reality, but we also need to extended meaning of intended meaning. Both are very, very important in a contemporary time, intended meaning and extended meaning. This intended meaning and extended meaning comes from Adrian Blau, and lots of people are also doing. For example, Manindraji is doing how to understand context, contextualization, decontextualization, and recontextualization. We need to understand theory in this way. Creative theory is, as a group, offers diverse academic pursuit. As a group, we seek to extend the intended meaning of the creative theory. Professor Mohanty, when he was defining creative theory in one of his books, he says that there are 4 ways of defining or doing political theory. One is assimilation with mainstream Western social science paradigm. Second is critique of Western theories. Third is search for alternatives to Western theories. And fourth, he defines creative theory. According to Professor Mohanty, creative theory seeks to generate a body of knowledge rooted autonomously in one's own environment. I'll come to these important vantage point or categorization of creative theory with 2 caveats. One is, I suggest that every act is creative act. That is a misnomer. Every act cannot be considered creative act, or that would be surplus optimism. Every act is not creative act, that would be surplus optimism. A difference is not always creative. A difference or doing things differently is not always creative, otherwise there would be serious problems. Second is, a creative act cannot be theorized as creative theory. All creative acts can't be called creative theory. And there is no rejection of the creative act, whether conscious or subconscious. The concern is much more severe. The sine qua non in the creative theory is desirous change consciously along with epistemological pursuit. I'll focus some of the features and the components of creative theory, or why I'm doing creative theory in some of my writings. One is, I consider that in my readings in last 20 years of political theory, first line or second line would be that creative theory is a spatial domain and craft reserved for the specialists. I seriously disagree. Theory is not a spatial domain or craft confined to a particular group or society. Societies, and I also agree that societies cannot be bereft of theorization. No society would be bereft of theorization. This is our problem if we are not understanding theories of societies. India is bereft of a theory that is not right position. This Orientalism is not acceptable. Second, since creativity is essentially anti-hierarchical, otherwise it would be reactionism, theory cannot be based on the simple East and West dichotomy. As I understand, every time we do not need to respond, I need to reply to the West or East dichotomy or categorization of the East and the West. That would destroy the creativity. If Western theories would not be on supreme paradigm, so maybe some of the Indian theories may be also not kept on superior paradigms. Unfortunately, the decolonization project has fallen into deep binary jingoism in last few years. Third, the concrete reality is impregnated with the major dissatisfaction. We need a concrete analysis. Vulgar relativism does not help much. So creative theory is concerned about vulgar relativism. In fact, the urge for philosophical relativism is not ipso facto solution, but at best escapism. Vulgar relativism is the best escapism. Fourth, thinking as a transformation is to be prioritized over thinking as a consumption. Creative transformation is more encouraged than creative consumption. Fifth feature of creative theory, I guess, is creativity cannot be reduced to the realm of commodity and consumption. In the new liberal sense, the purpose of creativity is defined in the realm of originality and utility. The end of originality and utility is commodity and commodification. Creativity is linked to the human species, which is a pre-commodity condition. I think that if we have to try to understand creative theory, we have to give emphasis on human being as a pre-commodity species, not a commodious species. Making creativity commodified strips it of its essence, which is unbridled initiative, immense imagination, and transformative life. Sixth is, the idea of creative theory is to propose transformation and exposing the structural limitations. Seventh, since creativity is a quintessential part of human nature, it becomes a conscious effort in the realm of theory. It proposes human creativity while explaining the structural constant. It needs to propose alternative ideas unheard of or rejected by the mainstream national imagination. While creative theory should also engage with this East and West dichotomy maybe sometime, but it should also challenge a certain form of national imaginations, because there cannot be one national imagination, there can be multiple national imaginations. Ninth, I think power of negative thinking is a very, very important. The positive thinking has actually led to the positivism. जहाँ पे सब कुछ अच्छा है, सब कुछ चलता है. I think the power of negative theory, negative thinking in a dialectical sense has to be restored. And the power of negative thinking is looking beyond the structure, looking beyond the surface. 10, the idea of political. I think the idea of political is very important. I'm not defining the concept of political in sense of friend and enemy binaries or Carl Schmithian position, but I think there should be recognition of temporal power. Temporal power is very important to understand for the dignity and rights and knowledge of people. 11th point would be that epistemological quest is very, very important for... 1 minute, I'll take 2 minutes maybe. 2 points more, that's all. Epistemological quest is very, very important for creative theory. That is beyond empiricization of knowledge or realities. Beyond theological knowledge, study of theology is a very, very important. But theology itself is a knowledge. I have serious problem and reservation. I may be wrong, I don't know. Theology should be subject of study. Theology can't ipso facto become the reference point of knowledge. Third, we need to move beyond new liberal knowledge. And we know that in India, yesterday there was a report in Indian Express or some newspaper where higher education or 70% higher education is in private domains and the private sector, where new liberal knowledge of fancy character, political science is reduced to governance, and governance is reduced to some empirical studies. That is a new liberal knowledge. And fourth point is we also be concerned about teleological position. That end is already defined for us. I think this should be challenged at a different level, that nobody should be in position to define and for everyone. That is the rejection of teleological position. And 10th and final point would be that we need transversal imagination, arrival of a new social or new imagination, which would be very, very important because as Hilal Bhai used lots of conceptual Hindi terms, I may have one liberty to use. I call it Swanya Swaraj. Swanya is Swa and Anya. There is nothing called erasure of other. And most of the liberal political theory self should be gracious enough to accept other or assimilate other. We have been reading this since last 20 years. I think that has to be changed. Other cannot be assimilated. Other will be... There should be actually presence of self and other in Swa and form. Swa and Anya. There can't be erasure of other by the self. Even at any cost, which we are looking at, we are trying to analyze democracies where other is actually in a serious crisis. So transversality is very, very important, and speaking to myself is also necessary to speak to others. If I'm speaking to myself, it is abortive if I'm not speaking to others. So. But why we are not speaking for others? Creative theory invites attention to social numbness. And we are seriously plagued by social numbness towards each other. And what is called an aesthetic age, where anesthesia has become important, we are not thinking about other as a part of your horizon. So creative theory should demands the arrival of new social, which is based on sensitivity, disruption of one-dimensional imagination, borrowing the term from Marquez. And I think dystopia should be read as not meaningless assertion, but as anxiety for creativity. So we reject many dystopia. I don't think that dystopia should be rejected by many people. There's anxiety for creativity. Conclusion. Creative theory offers the engaged reading of temporalities while offering the hope for creative action towards the transformation of the structure. Thank you so much for this opportunity.